Hello and welcome to Carlos Castaneda, the Wheel of Time, the wisdom of the shamans of ancient Mexico. These quotes are from Tales of Power, from Don Juan. There is no way to get rid of self-pity for good. It has a definite place and character in our lives. A definite facade which is recognizable. Thus, every time the occasion arises, the facade of self-pity becomes active. It has a history. But if one changes the facade, one shifts its place of prominence. One changes facades by shifting the component elements of the facade itself. Self-pity is useful to the user because he feels important and deserving of better conditions, better treatment, or because he is unwilling to assume responsibility for the acts that brought him to the state that elicited self-pity. So whenever one has a defect, a condition, an illness of some kind, or perhaps some kind of mental tendency to dwell upon negativity or self-pity. In this particular case, self-pity is the victim mentality rather than the warrior mentality. We allow ourselves to become overwhelmed by self-pity, and it pushes us into a state of inaction, ineffectiveness, and one can't be impeccable. It's not the warrior's way to be overcome by self-pity. But there's no way to get rid of it for good, in the same way that there's no way to get rid of any negative emotion for good. I mean, just because it's negative doesn't mean it doesn't have value. Like fear, for example. Fear can save our lives, can protect us in dangerous situations. So it's useful to have fear. Anything can be turned around to a warrior's advantage. So even when we notice self-pity arising, our assemblage point becomes fixed in that position of self-pity. We can't then move it to the place of no pity, where a neutrality of perception and effective action can take place from that position of the assemblage point. But if we are consumed by self-pity, it takes away our energy. So, obliterates our purpose. So it's like anger. Kill the monster when it's small. See it arising. See self-pity. And change the component parts. Change the submodalities, the images in your head, because self-pity has a history. A history of things going wrong, of things happening to us, of being the victim, of being bullied, of being persecuted, unfairly treated, that sort of thing. We say things are unjust, but we don't know what the intent, the creator intent, holds for us. We don't know. I mean, just because something seems negative, like a certain movement in society, for example, the Nazis, Nazi Germany, or neo-Nazis, or the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia, or any kind of a politically oppressive movement, we say that's terribly negative. But then again, if you look at the big picture, it may not be so negative, because something great occurs as a result of that bad episode in history. We learn never to let it happen again. For example, we don't, We don't want to be going back to Nazi Germany and killing all the Jews and all the murders and control and persecution of disabled people and artists and all that is terrible. But for some other people that moved away from that, their kids wouldn't have been born. They would have been born somewhere else. They may not have had the opportunities they had if it hadn't been for Nazi Germany. So everything has an ulterior purpose beyond its apparent event in consciousness, in society. So something that's apparently good might not necessarily be good, and something that's apparently bad might not necessarily be bad. We have to see everything from the perspective of the whole as much as possible, because there's no good without bad, no rich without poor. Everything exists because of its opposite. The interplay of opposites is something that is happening in the universe all of the time. It is necessarily so. It is necessarily so. It's necessary. Like we say that something's evil, but it's a necessary evil. So, just get that live science pop up out the way. I didn't do that, you know. So, back to Don Juan. Changing the facade of self-pity means only that one has assigned a secondary place to a formerly important element. Self-pity is still a prominent feature, but it has now taken a position in the background, in the same fashion that the idea of one's impending death, the idea of a warrior's humbleness, or the idea of responsibility for one's acts were all in the background at one time for a warrior, without ever being used until the moment he became a warrior. So, self-pity only becomes important and useful to us because it's assumed a place of prominence. It dominates our thoughts and perceptions, like grief or disappointment or anger, anything that consumes you and makes you a servant of it. You see? So, you've allowed it, the self-pity, well, not just you, everyone that has the necessary component of self-pity in their lives has allowed it to come to the forefront. But we can withdraw that place of prominence. I mean, we can shift it. The self-pity might be here in the forefront of our consciousness. It dominates our thoughts, our actions, our understanding, our interpretation of things. But we can move it to the side, and we can bring another, more propitious element forward, like joy, or delight, or strength, personal power. We can shift the place of prominence of any emotion, thought, feeling. We have the ability to select our thoughts, for example. And once we become aware of the nature of our thoughts, we can become responsible for changing them. I cannot stress how important it is to police the mind, to guard one's thoughts. Because, as the Buddha said, with our thoughts we make our world. And we're all responsible for co-creating the world with our thoughts, our actions. Our actions stem from our thoughts. So, nobleness of a warrior, the idea of one's inevitable death, which was at one time in the background, can now be brought to the forefront of our awareness. When we're aware of our impending death, there's no time for regrets, there's no time for disappointment, for grief, for depression. We don't want to go into infinity, the unknown, of whatever lies after death in a state of depression, because we don't want to be weakened in our exit. We want to battle it out till the very last moment of our life, because that's what it means to be a warrior, to be optimistic. A warrior acknowledges his pain, but he doesn't indulge in it. The mood of the warrior who enters into the unknown is not one of sadness. On the contrary, he's joyful because he feels humbled by his great fortune, confident that his spirit is impeccable, and above all, fully aware of his efficiency. A warrior's joyfulness comes from having accepted his fate and from having truthfully assessed what lies ahead of him. What does it mean to truthfully assess what lies ahead of you? Well, it means acting in advance, planning your day, planning your life, but not becoming so attached to the plan that we mistake it for the territory. Because the universe is always in flux. Everything is always changing. We exist in a dynamic universe of constant renewal, novelty. And we have to keep up to speed, as it were, with these changes. Be in the present here and now, but don't use that as an excuse to be inactive and do nothing, as some people might misinterpret the Taoist principle of Wu Wei, non-action, as passivity in the sense of apathy. But it isn't that. It's rather a state of awareness which is able to capture the flow and is able to bend to the wind. The willow will survive, whereas the mighty oak will fall. See? So, the principle of yielding is important. So when Don Juan says, a warrior acknowledges his pain, he knows it's there, he sees that it's there. There is so much suffering in the world. There is suffering in one's life, but it's here to challenge us, to teach us a lesson, because the real war is against our own defects, our own weaknesses. That's what Carlos meant when he said that a warrior is always in a state of war, permanent war. Not for some stupid country, for some stupid politician or idiotic foreign policy. Not that kind of war. Not the soldiers' war. The internal war. Spiritual warfare. War against the challengers, the flyers that exist in the multi-dimensional universe, the multiverse. So, and shaman warriors, sorcerers have been aware and fighting those battles since the beginning of time. So a warrior acknowledges his pain, but he doesn't indulge in it. Doesn't indulge in self-pity, doesn't allow it to become the place of prominence, doesn't allow it to dominate perceptions, is not swayed by the senses, sensuality, doesn't indulge, be consumed by, overwhelmed by, doesn't allow this to happen. So, the mood that results is not one of sadness, it's joy, joyfulness. Because he feels humbled by his great fortune. He's come across the answer, the path of heart. And he's confident that his spirit is impeccable. He puts himself in that position of having to believe. And in that mood, in that state of awareness, he can say he has truthfully assessed, he can truthfully assess what lies ahead. And that's what it means to be a warrior. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.